You've eaten Gotham's wealth, its spirit, but your feast is nearly over.
This isn't a blood hole. It's an operating table. And I'm the surgeon. Why aren't you laughing?
From this moment on, none of you are safe.
Welcome to the Batman Book Club, podcast exploring the Dark Knight Library. I'm your host, Ryan Lauer. The Batman Book Club is a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network, hosted by Batman on Film. Go to batmanonfilm.com, click on podcasts, and you'll find the Batman Podcast Network. Batman Book Club is also on Patreon if you like what's going on with the show and you want to help support the show and keep the generators running in the Wayne Manor study. Just go to patreon.com/thebatmanbc. Now, thank you for listening to episode 243, Batman Absolute Editions. Not talking about the Scott Snyder Absolute Batman series. We're not talking about that. Instead, we're talking about these books that a lot of us are double and triple dipping on because we're just that devoted to those stories. And when I think of Absolute Editions, I don't only think about my bank account. I also think about my guest today because he is one who I swear has a lot more Absolute Editions than I have. He's been on this show quite a few times. He's a professor, and we're all just a student. It's Chris Clow. Chris, thanks for coming back.
Thank you for the invitation, man. I really appreciate it, and you once again give me far more credit than I deserve. I'm very pleased to be back here, especially on such a great topic. So, thank you very much.
Yes, well, you are Mr. West Coast, but you did live in the Midwest, so you know how we operate sometimes. That if it wasn't true or we didn't like it, then we just wouldn't say it. So I
Sure.
didn't have to build you up, but I felt like it was earned and deserved. So I'm only going to speak the truth. So tip of the cap that I'm not wearing.
Oh, well, thank you very much, my friend.
Yes,
Yes, when I lived in Chicago, I did hear if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all.
the golden rule.
Probably more than I heard it from my mother. So,
Yeah.
it's but my mom has kind of a mean tongue sometimes too. So
Yeah.
maybe, yeah,
Okay. Fair. Fair. She has her reasons.
probably.
The I was telling you before we recorded, sometimes I have some long commutes with work, so my mind, starts to think about random things, and I think about this podcast, and I'm like, thinking months ahead as I lay out, what's this month got in store, what's this month got in store. There's been some big surprises this year. I did not have on my calendar. Let's talk to Steve Englehart. Let's talk to Tom King. Let's do the Batman Begins adaptation with Scott Beatty, who wrote it. But I did come across the idea of like, oh, absolute editions. That's an idea. I don't know how I do that. Who would I have? Chris Clow. That just jumped right in. It interrupted my thinking. And whatever I decide to do with it, I feel like there's only one man for the job, and it's Chris Clow because um, we are both big fans of the format. And though I don't know your entire collection, I have seen because I didn't mention this in your intro. You're part of the Comic Binge on YouTube. Subscribe, watch with that rascal Paul Herman, and
Thank you.
sometimes our friend Javi Churio. Uh, but I've seen you talk about it there. I have seen, you have a nice collection of absolute editions. So the main goal in this episode is to narrow that down a little bit because there's tons of absolute editions, and this is a Batman show. So we're going to talk Batman absolute editions. And I wanted to list our top three and then have a runner up, someone in the number 4 slot. And even though I came up with top three and I was like, all right, let's give space for one more as a honorable mention, it was still really freaking hard for me to choose number 2, number 3, number 4. Actually, I think 1 and 2 were semi simple. 3 and 4 were tough.
Hmm.
I don't
Yeah.
know if you're still, until we get to talking about it and choosing, are you still processing who's got the 4 slot, or is it made up at this point?
I mean, I'm still kind of mulling it over, but I think
All
I
right.
have a decent idea. But I mean, yeah, I could talk about the benefits of this format
Mhm.
for a long time. But yeah, I mean, it is a particularly tough choice. I think it's pretty clear that Batman has been the biggest beneficiary of the absolute format by far.
Yeah.
So that means that there's a wider gamut of Batman stories available in absolute format, but it's still like an upper echelon tier of Batman storytelling that manages to get the treatment,
Yeah.
which should say something. I mean, it's like it's just a few fingers of Superman absolutes, but with Batman, you have to broaden it out a little bit. But that also just speaks to the quality of Batman storytelling generally, and
Yeah.
especially in comparison with a lot of other uh, similarly situated characters. So it's a tough choice. And yes, I have poured a significant amount of money into collecting this format.
Same.
But do I regret it? No, not
Yeah.
really.
Same. Yeah. I look at all of them that I have and the three, four, three that wouldn't fit, and I have no regrets on any of them. I don't, even ones that it's like, oh, this is my third time buying the story. I have no regrets that I got the absolute edition of it. So I want to list first, going to the Wikipedia page. This is how they summarize for anybody who possibly doesn't know what an absolute edition is, or they've heard of it, but are like, what is the big deal? It says the Wikipedia opening paragraph says DC Comics Absolute Edition is a series of archival quality printings of graphic novels published by DC Comics and its imprints Wildstorm and Vertigo. Each is presented in a hardcover and slipcased edition with cloth bookmark consisting of one or more books, which include restored, corrected, and recolored versions of the original work, reprinted at 8 by 12 inches. Also included are supplemental materials regarding the creation of the work, including sketches, comic scripts, and memos. Now, you already kind of touched upon that Batman is the big beneficiary of this. This could be boring or this could be fun. But from my looking, research, all that stuff, not in release order, but here are the Batman absolutes that up to now, and if I've missed any, please jump in and let me know, that have been released. Uh, in like I said, in not no particular order. Hush, Batman Incorporated, The Court of Owls, Year One, The Killing Joke, The Black Mirror, Arkham Asylum, Three Jokers, Batman and Son, Death of the Family, Zero Year, The Long Halloween, Dark Victory, Haunted Knight, Dark Knight, Dark Knight the Master Race, Batman and Robin, All Star Batman and Robin. Also, just like this show, if it's not a Batman book, a story that Batman is very important to, so he's a supporting character. There are also absolutes of those, such as Crisis on Infinite Earths, Dark Knight's Metal, Dark Knight's Death Metal, The New Frontier, Doomsday Clock, Identity Crisis, Justice League Origin, Justice League The World's Greatest Superheroes, Kingdom Come, Superman Batman Volumes 1 and 2, and Luther Joker. Now, Chris, did I miss any?
Final Crisis, probably.
Did I? Oh my gosh, good. Well done. You're sitting on
But
that for sure. Like,
I
oh,
mean,
let's see if he
I
brings
don't
up
know
more.
if that's if that's a willful omission on your
Um,
part or not. But
that's
uh, did you say
no, no, no.
Flashpoint?
Thank you. Yes, and I even have Flashpoint. Oh my gosh, can't believe I
There you
didn't say
go.
Flashpoint. There you go. There's two. What else you got? And both of those, absolutely. Batman is the second lead of the Flashpoint story, and maybe the most memorable thing about Final Crisis involves Batman. So both of those absolutely
Yeah.
100% count. Um, good
The
ones.
only thing
Okay.
that I would open it up to, I guess, and these are far more tangential.
Hmm.
Superman Red Sun, which I think is that one's still forthcoming. I don't think that one's
Uh,
actually been released yet.
just came out
Oh,
back half of June. It came out in June. I'm
oh,
not going to
okay.
say beginning,
Very
middle,
recent.
or end. Yeah, it's very recent.
Sure. And then actually, Green Arrow Quiver,
Okay. All
the
right.
Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
But that's like that's an edge case, arguably. But Kevin Smith certainly likes writing Batman, so Batman had
Sure.
a decent role in that story. But I don't think you would miss the question on the grade, right? If you
No,
didn't include a Green
hope
Arrow book.
I mean, hopefully not. I read that once, not the absolute version, but his Quiver story, and man, I don't remember anything from that. I remember liking it, but yeah,
The
I don't know how long ago that was. I don't remember anything.
the thing that was cool about it as a Batman fan is just like Ollie just arrives, right? He's back in the land of the living after he was blown up in an airplane several years ago. So Batman understandably is like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah.
And like drugs him and brings him to the cave and starts experimenting on him to figure out what he is because he's not even sure he's human.
Yeah.
And it goes into a pretty different direction. The thing that as a Batman fan I remember like really sticking out was that Ollie or this terrestrial version of Ollie actually made it into heaven and you saw Jason Todd swinging around and
Hmm.
this was a few years before what happened to Jason happened. So
Oh my
I was
gosh.
just fun memories.
I just good times, the life and times of Jason Todd. If we could all live half the life he has.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, yeah.
oh my gosh. So let's go with just a quick like history. What's your history with absolute editions?
I didn't start appreciating them until I was working as a retailer, and
Hmm.
I had a lot more access to them. But my first one, and I think it's probably true of a lot of newish or people who came in as like longtime fans around the same time I did. My
Yeah.
first one was Hush.
Hmm.
It was a pretty early printing. I don't know if it's the first printing that I have. The slipcase is in horrible shape. In fact, I'm actually probably going to try to replace at least the slipcase at some point. But Hush was the first one, and Watchmen was the second one. And Hush, understandably, it's like a great absolute edition. Jim Lee's detail blown up at that size is beautiful to behold, of course. Watchmen, I think, is when I really fell in love with the absolute format.
Hmm.
I was working, let's see. So this was, I actually picked up Watchmen the first time. The first time I ever read it was when I was working as a scooper at an ice cream store. And getting like thick muscles right here from all of the scooping I was doing. And fell
Chris
in
is
love with
jacked,
this.
folks. Let me tell you, he's still jacked.
I wish. Um, but this was a few years before the movie. I had tried to read that book when I was younger, but I just didn't really grasp it. It took me to
Yeah.
be like 18, 19, 20 to really understand what the book was about.
Same. It was
And
that the first trailer of the movie. I knew of Watchmen, and I think I felt intimidated by it. And it wasn't
sure.
until, yeah, like when that first trailer hit with The Dark Knight,
Mhm.
then I was like, it's time. And I'm
Is
glad that
it
I waited
right
that long.
where you are?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
great
Thank you,
trailer.
Smashing Pumpkins.
Oh,
Um,
totally. From the
so yeah,
Batman and Robin
I'm
soundtrack.
with you. Yeah, that's right. Yes, it's all connected. Back to Batman.
Um,
Um,
but
yeah, but
then I
I'm
was,
with you. I waited that long to read Watchmen. Go ahead.
yeah, which I would argue is a good age to read that book,
Yep.
If you try to read it as a kid and if you can grasp everything, then more power to you, but that was not me. So when I started working as a retailer, this was probably about 6 months or so after the first time that I actually fully absorbed the book. We got new copies of the Absolute Edition in, and I decided to spring for it. And the mapping isn't abundantly different from the trade that I read,
Hmm.
but specifically the supplemental material, like the Hollis Mason autobiography, or like the Tales of the Black Freighter stuff, and the other like newspapers and
Yeah.
interviews. That's when I really started to understand like how bigger is better in this
Hmm.
case. It's not always an adage that is true, but in this case it was. And Dave Gibbons' artwork, it's the pages were remastered, I think, by Wildstorm, so everything was really clean. Coloring was very clean, cleaner than the trade that I had. And I just really started to gravitate toward the format, and that's when the gloves came off and I started acquiring them with reckless abandon. Thankfully, I was able to get, I think after Watchmen, the next one I picked up was Crisis on Infinite Earths. Same story. I mean, that is
Hmm.
an they're finally reprinting that Absolute next year, but it's been a long time since it's been in print. And it has two volumes to it. It has the main series and a supplemental book on its own. So those 2 volume slipcase absolutes are some of my favorites. And George Perez's artwork. I feel like you might lose a little bit of the detail in the original format, but the
Hmm.
man was impeccably detailed in every single thing that he did. And the Absolute Edition really shows that off. On top of that, just being a super dense story, it's also just like extremely ambitious and perfect for the
Hmm.
format. And it has a great painted cover by Alex Ross. It's packed to the gills with all sorts of special features. And I'm already like, even back then, I was a special edition DVD kind of guy. I get 4K steel books of the movies that I want in my collection, or the 4K steel books of comic books, basically. It's
Hmm.
just like you're getting really good supplementary material. If you want to revisit the story, you're doing so on, in most cases, the biggest possible canvas. These days, they're doing like those artist edition
Yeah.
reproductions, which are bigger. But the absolute format is just such a great format for those who love the comics medium and who are interested in the way that comics come together, because there's a lot of really good behind the scenes material in a lot of them, not in all of them, unfortunately, but in a lot of them. And it might be a little bit of a challenge to hold. Like, that's why I can't convince Paul to give absolutes a bigger try, because he says they're too big. He says the same thing about Omnibuy. But I just love the format to death,
Yeah.
and they're durable, and they let me see my favorite heroes in the biggest possible light. And there are a couple that are not in print that I'm still trying to find. So I just love it.
You hit a lot of notes that I did too. I'm trying to make sense of what one of my notes was, and it doesn't make sense. I'll say almost like the priority of the absolute editions is that it's a showcase for an artist, of a particular book because it bluntly put of like it's just bigger. So you're just gonna get the picture bigger. So you're gonna see more detail of like you just said, George Perez, and you'll see Jim Lee's art and Greg Capullo and these recent ones that have been really like very detailed artists. You get to see everything, which is great. I've long said it's like comics in IMAX. Like if I can, that's what I want to be my version of a story that I love. I was introduced to them by I'd never heard of them before, and my uncle had, I think, Watchmen and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and I think he might have had the very first Kingdom Come edition. And
Oh,
I was
nice.
just like, oh, what are these? He's like, they're absolute editions. And it's almost fair to say most people who get into absolute editions have the Watchmen absolute edition. I just kind of feel
Probably.
like it's a must. Uh,
Yeah.
and so I told myself, though, I had to this barrier of like, I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble unless I, limit myself. So my absolute rule is Batman's occasional uh straying in Watchmen, the Len Wein, Bernie Wrightson Swamp Thing, which there is one issue with Batman. Swamp Thing
Yeah.
comes to Gotham, so fair. And All-Star Superman. Nope, not all Superman for all seasons, because that's my favorite Superman story. In which there is included in that in the back a very short story where Bruce Wayne shows up. So really, Watchmen's the only one where I'm breaking the rule because there's no Batman anywhere on that one. So it counts. But I told myself I was going to be very strict on that because I'd run out of space. I'd spend a lot of money. And mine actually, and we'll get to it when we get to talking of what my first Absolute Edition was. So, without um, waiting any further, let's start talking about like our favorite Batman Absolute Editions. So the way that we're gonna do this is that you and I are just gonna go back and forth, just naming no particular order. We're not ranking until after we've basically shown our hand of like the 4 books each that's in play. So um, I'll let you go first. You are the guest, so you can go ahead and name one of your 4.
Okay, let me grab it. So
Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
I picked this one because I think what you said about being a showcase for the artist is really, really critical to this
Mm-hmm.
format. Um, but the artist, of course, is also a window into the emotional reality of a story. You know, physical reality in superhero comics,
Hmm.
not the easiest thing to come by, and arguably inappropriate in a lot of cases, depending on the character, unless you're talking about maybe Frank Castle, right?
Hmm.
But emotional reality in superhero stories, especially in more modern ones, I think that's a cornerstone of the storytelling, and the emotional reality of the Black Mirror, uh,
Ooh,
I think
yes.
is absolutely on display.
Oh,
You have two artists with very different styles in this book. You
yeah.
have Jacques and you have Francesco Francavilla. And despite the fact that their styles are radically different, the emotional through line that Scott Snyder's writing provides makes the lineage between them clear, on top of the fact that they're dealing with the same characters and everything. But Black Mirror, I think, was appropriate in the sense that it really punched people in the face with what Scott Snyder is capable of in Gotham City specifically.
Yeah.
And I still really deeply love this story. This absolute was hard for me to find because I actually bought it while it was out of print. I had to have this imported from the UK. Uh,
Wow.
and but I love this absolute to death. There is a it doesn't have the biggest slate of special features in the back of it, but what it makes up for is just, the sheer beauty of the presentation in
Hmm.
this book. This to me is one of the prettiest absolutes, despite the artists being kind of purposefully rough around the edges. There's kind of a strange beauty in the rugged grittiness and the bloodiness that's on display here that I really
Yeah.
admire. And on top of that, it's just, it's probably, as much as I love Grant Morrison, this might be the best Dick Grayson Batman story from this era, just because it was solely focused on him
Yeah.
and it leaned into Dick Grayson as a character in a way that maybe Batman Reborn wasn't as concerned with doing. So, Black Mirror.
Wow. It's been a long time since I talked about that on this show. Chris Balgo was on. I remember he chose that one. Um, Black Mirror flipped my bowl of cereal, punched me in the face, kicked me in the groin, you name it, you name the expression. It knocked me on my ass. I love the Black Mirror. And I was fortunate I got to actually tell Scott Snyder that, and I think he did. I think he was a little caught off guard because I didn't phrase it well when I came up and I go, a lot of people say that the Court of Owls is your best Batman story, and I respect that, but I don't think that's right. And he's like, and I go, I think the Black Mirror is your best. That's my favorite. I love the Black Mirror. And he was like, oh, thank you. Well, and then he started to say about like, his personal ties to it and stuff like that. And I was like, man, I did not word that well, but in the end he got that I love the Black Mirror. And I do, and I've got that absolute as well. And that was my exposure to Francavilla, who, man, I will, whatever he does, I'll track it down and I'll read it because I really dig his art and I just think the whole story is I totally agree with you. I love such different styles between his and Jock's, and and especially in the finale issue, and it's like both of them are in that finale. You're going back and forth, but it all works because it's such a good, well-written story. So, good pick. Every single
Okay.
one of these, I will tell you, was in consideration for the fourth spot. Whether it was or not, I don't know. We'll talk about it later. I'm gonna rip the band-aid off. So you mentioned something about like being somebody who likes extras. That's something that I should have mentioned, is that absolute editions provide the opportunity for you to get entertainment, for you to get gosh, what am I thinking of? Documents, a peek behind the curtain, extras that you can't get elsewhere. That's kind of why you're also spending this extra money, is to get some stuff that you can't find elsewhere. And I've always been a sucker for making of. Um, Way back in VHS days, very rare, like this, my Sleepy Hollow VHS tape had like a 10 or 15 minutes making of at the very end of the movie, and I always stuck through the credits so I could watch that. So That's a big pull for me with Absolute Editions. My very first Absolute Edition came in 2007 when DC released Absolute The Long Halloween. Will surprise nobody. I know. It'll surprise nobody. But this was a story that at that point, um, I was finally in an area, it was in college. I was finally, I've said it here so many times, able to go to comic shops and start to, uh, catch up on previous Batman stuff that I just didn't have access to before. And I was only 4 years, I think. 2003 is what I always, yeah, 2003 is when I read The Long Halloween for the first time. So it's still relatively fresh. And I already knew that, like, I'd heard now about these absolute editions, and I'm like, man, but I love this story. It's bigger. And then when I got it, the amount of extras. So the art period, game over. Of course, Tim Sale. The story, Jeff Loeb, fantastic. But uh this came with amount of extras that was just like fed my empty belly of Batman knowledge with the because Dark Knight was just like it just started filming. It was in production. And to open and get a conversation with Christopher Nolan and David Goyer, which now is fascinating to reread, but it happened before The Dark Knight was even um before it became what it now is. And then in the back to have Tim Sale and Jeff Loeb in an interview talking about the book itself, pre, during, and post, to see Jeff Loeb's initial, like a proposal for the story, to see the pictures of the toys that were released, to get the Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale commentary on each cover. Like it was unreal to me that a Batman story that I was in love with came with all of this extra information and goodies. And so I'm so glad you never forget your first. Well, this was my first. I'll never forget it. This like it set the table for me of like this is what absolute editions are. This is why it's the A level tier for stories, for format of stories. That's my pitch. Episode's over. We're done. Chris, thanks for coming
No,
on.
that's a great pitch because you're right. It's like a reference level absolute edition. It's what you want the
Yeah.
format to be. And one of the things too that, DC kind of started making some mistakes with their collected editions in the mid to late 2000s because they would just like default to like a glossy paper for everything.
Thank you for
And
mentioning that. Yeah.
yeah, it's not always the right pick, especially if you're going to be doing like archival quality printings like an absolute. I mean,
Hmm.
if the gloss is part of the intent of the artist, then great. But I remember, and I might have even talked to you about this before, but there was like a year one deluxe edition that DC put out like in 2013, 14, I think, maybe a little bit sooner than that. Or, and it was on glossy paper, and David Mazzucchelli just like immediately came out against it, saying this is not the right fit for this story, not at
Yeah.
all. And one of the things that I really appreciate about the Loeb Sale Batman Absolute, and I mean, and for all seasons too, that's a beautiful absolute. I love that.
Hmm.
Um, there is an intention behind the flat paper,
Yeah.
and and even the feel of it. I don't know if people talk about, and maybe I'm focused a little too much on it, but the feel of the pages, it's a really smooth reading experience
Oh,
when you're turning them, and it feels like silk in your hand,
Kowalski would always
on
say
top
like
of
smell the
everything.
floppies, smell the floppies. Well, smell the construction paper.
Sure.
This book is
Yeah,
18
right.
years old, and oh my gosh, does it just smell like history? It is
The
wonderful. That paper.
slipcase.
Oh, the that's right. I'm huffing my slipcase of cardboard, but it's
You should
yeah.
have. They should bottle that. They should bottle it and sell it in comic
You
shops
should
because
huff
I
it. You
think
should.
the slipcase keeps that stuff locked in too,
Yeah,
and I mean, yeah, that stuff is secondary to the reading experience, but it is a part of the experience
part of it.
of reading an absolute, and it's one of the things that I love about those ones in particular. And yeah, I mean, Tim Sale's artwork at that size too, and you know and I think I've mentioned this to you before, but like the deceptive complexity that someone like Greg Capullo has it too, but Tim Sale
Yeah,
certainly had it. You know, there is so much detail to be mined from his pages, particularly on like his splashes, I think.
yeah,
And when you read Absolute Long Halloween, you get the full effect.
yeah.
And it's a great way to read that story, maybe the best way to read that story.
I know we sound like very nerdy about when we're talking about the paper, but they released a deluxe edition a couple years ago of the Long Halloween, and they printed it on glossy because
Mm,
I was like, I really want to see what they, because the first trade I ever got of Long Halloween, it was the like a not as thick as Absolute, but it was a thicker paper. Then I tracked down the hardcover, the original hardcover. That was like the thicker paper. So comparing that to the glossy paper, it's like that's just that's it seems cheap and it's like, man, this isn't the way to read this. Trying to be as open-minded as I can. I'm just like, no, really, it's so drenched in black and dark that like the thicker paper helps like it needs to be on that. And
yeah.
I'd looked up because this Absolute's been out of print for quite a while. And people have honestly asked me about it. And fortunately, that first I think Wednesday in January of 2026, a reprint of this is going to be out. So like start saving your money. I can't push something more, obviously, than the Long Halloween because it seems like the print is or the reprint is going to be just like this one. And like no question, if Absolute's your thing or you're kind of curious, it's like that's the route to go. And they're reprinting the Haunted Night and Dark Victory ones in August and September of this year. So it's like you can get the the trilogy in Absolute form if you're ready to drop some money. But
Yeah,
Long Halloween's coming.
definitely.
Uh, all right. I'm not spent yet, but my goodness. Chris, why don't you go ahead and drop another one?
All right. Well,
Oh boy, here we go.
you went one direction, so I feel fine going the other direction here.
Hey, there
Um,
we go.
Absolute Dark Victory. This might sound sacrilegious to you, and I apologize if it does.
If you're
I
gonna say what I
firmly
think you're gonna
believe
say,
that.
I know you're not alone, and I'll tell you how I know. Go on.
Well, no, I don't think I'm going to say quite what you think I'm going to say.
Okay.
Between these two in particular,
Mhm.
Long Halloween is the better story. I think I might enjoy reading Dark Victory a little more. And that's just purely because of Dick Grayson. You know, like the acumen of the kind of Dark Victory story or the kind of Long Halloween storytelling while applying it to the origin of Robin really makes this one stick out to me. And like I don't feel like I'm not like talking down about Long Halloween. Like
Sure.
that book's place in Batman mythology is forever cemented, you know.
Yeah.
But I do feel like people might look over this one a little too easily or overlook this one a little too easily because it is a direct continuation.
Hmm.
The books are really designed to be enjoyed back to back. Um, and for my money, this is my favorite version of Dick Grayson's origin story because it really emphasizes, without sacrificing any of the integrity of a story like The Long Halloween, it just inserts this other element that just doesn't seem like it should fit in the modern era of Batman storytelling. And yet, the core beating heart of the relationship between these two people is at the core once Dick Grayson is introduced into this story. Before he shows up in Dark Victory, it's very much like Long Halloween 1.5, but it becomes something new by introducing who will be Robin.
Hmm.
And it introduces new elements of Bruce's character that even he wasn't sure was in his own head or even in his own heart. And that's one of the reasons I love this story as much as I do. It's just like it's Long Halloween pushed ever so slightly into the Dick Sprang era. And it's not something that should work, but for my money, it works incredibly well. And that's probably just, comic book fan talking, but I just love the conceit behind the creation of this book. I really do. But the Absolute Edition, it's very much in the same vein as the Long Halloween Absolute Edition in the sense that it's also packed with extras. There's really good insight. I think David Goyer wrote the introduction to this book specifically.
Yeah.
This came out like just before Rises, I think, or like right around there, if I'm remembering
I
correctly.
feel like it came out right before Man of Steel. Fortunately, I have something up
Okay.
here. No, you're correct. I stand corrected. May 23rd, 2012. For some
Okay.
reason, I
Yeah.
thought it came out right before Man of Steel, but maybe Goyer's mentioned as writing Man of Steel or something like that in addition to Dark Knight Rises. So
Yeah,
right
and
before
he
it
meant
rises.
yeah, and he mentions Rises at the end of his introduction to this book, and I just really appreciate the insight that he brings, and specifically in not overlooking Dark Victory as this really important kind of catalyst into the conception of what is arguably the greatest cinematic representation of Batman.
Hmm.
So, and that's also just getting into the specifics of what the story does, but also what the artwork does. Um, Too many people sleep on Dark Victory.
Hmm.
If you've never read it, you certainly should. If
Yeah.
you have read it and maybe you do have or are inclined to get the Absolute Edition of Long Halloween, give this one a look too,
Yeah.
because as far as origin stories for Robin go, that effectively explain what he brings to the table in the modern era, where you might eschew a kid running around in a yellow cape. This story pulls it off brilliantly, and it sacrifices none of the narrative complexity or the emotional weight of Long Halloween in the process. So this one has a place of honor on my shelf, and I love revisiting this story, especially in this format.
Uh, yeah. I think Tim Sale, I don't think it's included in that one, but he did say that one, he thinks his work is better in Dark Victory than Long Halloween. And I thought somewhere he thought overall as a story, Dark Victory was better, but I'm not like, I'm a little unsure on that part. But I do know he thought um, that his art was better on Dark Victory. I've got nothing negative to say about that. I have Dark Victory just right outside the store. I'm going to tell everybody of like, if you don't have them, go for the trifecta here, okay? Max out that credit card. You won't have to, or else somebody's ripping you off. Get all these three as they come in the reprints. Dark Victory, I think why that's one that I didn't throw in there is because like I said, when I don't think it has as many fun extras for me as I would have loved to have seen.
That's fair.
That said, like that's my only quote unquote complaint, nitpick about the absolute. Like that's it. Because otherwise, the first trade I had for Dark Victory was glossy paper. So again, for this absolute, they went for the thicker paper again. I'm like, mwah, chef's kiss. Like this is how it needs to be read. And the
Yeah,
reprints do the glossy paper. So yeah, I would never tell you not a good pick, but this definitely was not a bad pick. Um,
excellent.
Dark Victory. Oh, love it. Let's see. Just randomly grabbing over here. We're gonna go with one that's kind of recent. I don't know if this will be surprising or not, but you and I were talking about Jason Fabik earlier before we hit record and Jeff Johns, and I'm going to pick Absolute Batman 3
Hey,
Jokers. Chris, I revisited this 2 months ago and posted it. A lot of people have a lot of things to say about Three Jokers.
really?
Yeah. I
I
I
am
guess
shocked.
I know. And I don't I maybe I was surprised. I'm not dumb enough to think that there's anything that is universally beloved. Not one person doesn't like it. I'm not that naive, but this, I mean, covered the entire spectrum. One of the best of all time, one of the worst comics I've ever read. The art is fantastic. Jeff Johns is the best. With the art's good, but Jeff Johns should never be able to write a Batman story again. Like you name it, comments all over the place. And I'm like, I was not fishing for this. I really wasn't. I was just posting the Three Jokers Absolute Edition, and that I love it. That's really all I was trying to do, and yeah, it got a lot of responses. Kind of surprised me, but let's go to the Absolute Edition itself. So no matter where you stand on Three Jokers, I'm not gonna. That's not for here. Um, the book, I was very. This was a quick turnaround. Released in
Yeah.
2020, and this came out in 2023. Uh, I was of course excited because I've been basically in on the ground floor with Jason Fabok doing Batman. I earlier this year, the Dark Knight #4 or Batman Dark Knight #4 by David Finch with Jason Fabok, his first time doing Batman. I got that signed by Finch this year. I don't know if I'll ever see Fabok at a con or something, and I would love for him to sign it. And I've loved his Batman from the get-go. So I was a big fan of the story. This is might in the end be Favok's best work, most celebrated work. I mean, up for debate, sure, but I think it is just amazing work by him. Um, and so to get that on a, on a on an IMAX screen, basically, it's I don't know that I'll go back and reread the other versions of this, including all those freaking variants I bought. I don't know if I'll ever read those again because I'm like, I need to read the Absolute Edition. Then you go to the extras. And I'm not going to say that this has the best extras of any Absolute that I've ever seen before. But what I really liked about it was that not only is the story and the arts, expanded on in a profile uh for Fabok, but like the extras seem almost like it's his personal notes. I don't know that it is. It's like somebody else found out and they wrote, like Fabok told someone and they wrote the notes, but you just see so much development process to see how much thought, care, and depth was put into creating this book, especially from Fabok's side. You see a bunch of created variant covers with some notes, ones that weren't used, initial like proposed like trade dress for like what they were how they were going to release the book and then ultimately didn't. I wish they would have. That would have been cool. The design of this Absolute Edition, and then you get to see starting a project where there's a picture where he's in the room with Jeff Johns is there and Jeff Johns is at a whiteboard. Like this is when they're writing out this story, and that to me is just like for someone you've already mentioned, and I did too of the extras, love the extras. I love seeing that. And he's got three different Joker figures with Batman on the table in front of him too. Like that's all just fun, dorky stuff that I just really like. And then you see the script, you see the pages on, so you can compare and contrast. That's always fun. That's kind of become a big thing with absolutes that I like. And then maybe my favorite thing in the absolute is they left some pages for the Easter eggs. Oh my gosh, I love that. References, things that you picked out yourself and you thought, I'm pretty smart. I picked up on these. Oh, that was a little nod here, a little nod there. And then you go to the back and you see, oh, they've got 6 pages of Easter eggs. I got 4 of them of the, I don't know, 100 Easter eggs they put in this. And so that was really fun for me to look at too. So I didn't hesitate buying this as soon as it came out, and it did just jump up to one as I was looking at my absolutes and started narrowing down, and it's just like, man, this one just keeps popping up. I just feel this is one that jumps towards the top. I do story complaints, arguments aside, I'm not here for that. Just like the book itself is absolutely, no pun intended, worthy of money and revisits in this format.
Well said. Do you still have these floating around? These
Oh, you bet I
playing
do.
cards? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rob Myers, I forget which one didn't my shop didn't have any, and Rob Myers sent me one or two, and I'm forever in his debt. And then the
Nice.
next 2 books, I got the other 2 cards.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I'm surprised those didn't
Yep.
come in the absolute.
They probably should have now that you mention it. But here there's a couple of angles on that one in particular that I think are worth exploring. First of all, Three Jokers, I mean, despite the fact that it might have had a little bit of a protracted schedule, it's a
Yeah.
relatively small book. So if you are going to pump it up to the absolute format, you need to justify
Yeah.
if you're going to ask for $100 for it, I think was the
Yep.
price.
It's at $100 on the like the cover price.
Yeah, and I mean, chances are, if you've been around the block, you don't necessarily always need to pay sticker price for an absolute
Hmm.
edition. But a story that short, you can make up for it with a nice bench of extra supplemental material. And that book is a key example of the way that you do that. I think the
Hmm.
lowest amount that I've ever paid for an absolute was $27, and it was for Killing Joke.
Yeah.
Uh,
Blows my freaking mind how
right.
inexpensive that one is.
And the for all, I mean, considering everything with that one too, there's not a lot in there. There's two versions
Hmm.
of the story. And there's a couple of little notes, but it's not like Alan Moore is chomping at the bit to participate in anything
Yeah.
with DC Comics. So, they got a lot of some interesting things from Boland, but the Killing Joke Absolute is very thin, and the price these days generally reflects that. But with three Jokers, um, they had the foresight to understand that, well, first of all, it's a slightly longer story, but it's still not a huge story. So let's just pump it up with things that people will find interesting. Three Jokers, regardless of what you think about it, has a fascinating narrative lineage. It was first hinted at during the Dark Side War with Johns and Fabok, their run on Justice League that ended their time on the New 52, the League's time on the New 52. Really, it kind of ended the New 52
Yeah.
universe, generally
Yeah.
speaking. I love that story. I kind of hope that gets an absolute someday.
Same.
But yeah, when that one was announced, I jumped on it immediately. I mean, I come down on the side as someone who generally liked that story quite a bit because it like pushed the idea that Johns generally tries to push in a lot of his material, including in material with Ghost Machine these days, the value of compassion.
Yeah.
What separates a hero from a villain. It seems to me like most of the complaints about the story are mechanical in nature as opposed to the emotional message that the story is trying to push forward. Batman is capable of a level of forgiveness that we've never seen before, and in that he derives an incredible amount of strength. That's what I take from the story, and that's why I enjoy it as much as I do. I respect people who have different opinions. I hope you do the same for me. But that's where I come down on it. So it absolutely earned a place on my shelf when it came out. And yeah, I can't say enough about Fabok's impeccable work, of course. But it's also just, regardless of what you think about it, every decision was thought through.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a well built story on top of the emotional messaging that I just really, really appreciate. And the artwork is beautiful. So why not put it on an IMAX screen on your shelf?
Yeah. And I should also mention because I want to be better about it. Brad Anderson, the colorist
Colors.
on that as well. Like my goodness, his work, which he is, I think he's their go-to guy of when Johns and Fabok are together, they bring in Anderson to do work too. And it's very comfortable when you see it like, oh yeah, those two together of Fabok and Anderson, like mwah, good stuff.
Definitely.
Let's see. Let's go. All right, back to you for another one.
Alrighty.
Oh boy, here we go.
So this one I think is also generally described in Batman circles as controversial. It was especially controversial in its own time. I think it's had a little bit of uh, reformation in the eyes of some fans, certainly not everybody. And I know
Hmm.
several people who will always hate it. I never will. I think it's a wonderful showcase of several different top tier artists in DC Comics, and that is Batman Reborn. Uh,
Whoa.
this is my second choice with Dick Grayson as Batman, by the way. That
Uh-oh.
wasn't really a conscious
You heard
decision on
Chris
my part.
Clow hates Bruce Wayne.
That's
That's
going
what
to
it
be the
is.
headline, right? Yeah. Well, honestly, though, one of the reasons I love these stories, but before getting into the specifics of the Absolute Edition, one of the reasons I love these stories as much as I do is because of how much they say about Bruce Wayne without him being in most of them.
Hmm.
I mean, the entire impetus behind Batman Reborn, in Morrison's hands and also elsewhere in the DCU, was to show how many people and how much of an intense operation it takes to fill Bruce Wayne's shoes. Is one guy who did everything on his own, and when he's gone, it takes a lot of people to fill the gap. And Dick Grayson is riddled with self-doubt, and he's weighed down by the burden of the mantle of Batman. And that's to me a big part of this story. Damian is also a big part of this story. That's why I said earlier about Black Mirror, that was a story that was more directly focused on Dick Grayson. It invoked his
Hmm.
history in the circus and everything. This is more about Dick's place in the legacy of Batman and how he can impart messages to Bruce Wayne's son. And the reversal of the traditional Batman Robin dynamic, where you have a bright knight and a dark wonder, is one of the things that I love about Batman Reborn generally. But you also have, you have Frank Quitely in here, you have Philip Tan, you've got Fraser Irving. This is an incredible showcase of a lot of different artists. And it's packed as well. There's 16 issues of Batman and Robin in here.
Yeah. Woo.
And there's a lot of really solid extra material, from the original sketches of Quitely putting the character designs together, Morrison's notes. Morrison, is a very interesting creator because, like cover sketches are pretty common when working with Grant Morrison, and then he lets the artist go off and do what they will do with it. But he usually comes up with a lot of the cover concepts, and you can see a lot of them in here.
Hmm.
And it's just such a fascinating era of Batman storytelling. I really do feel like people who are complaining about the absence of Bruce Wayne during this time are kind of missing the point. That the point of these kinds of stories, in addition to telling us something potentially new about the mantle of Batman, was about how important Bruce Wayne is without him being there.
Hmm.
And it's one of the reasons why I love the run broadly as much as I do, and these stories specifically. So this was an immediate jump. I think, unfortunately, it's out of print right now. Hopefully, that's a mistake that they rectify soon. But yeah, I can't recommend this enough. And just as an example of the absolute format, you get a lot of really interesting visual changes between the artists and the different arcs that I think is absolutely, there you go again, worth taking in.
I
So
should have announced at the beginning it's going to be a drinking game how much we say absolute.
right.
Even with absolutely, like it's unavoidable. Just unavoidable. It's gonna
Absolutely.
happen. Yeah. You are correct that that absolute is out of print. I've said on here before, and it's funny that you're the one that I get to say this to also, that when I got back into comics, or when I was able to do Batman Monthly and start to follow it, was ground floor of Morrison's run. That was one of the first. I got a four issues at once somebody had gotten for me, and one of them was 655, and then 656, and then it was a Legends of the Dark Knight and something else. And then I hadn't gone back since. And Morrison's run, like the ride was so much fun. RIP, go back. Javi loves to still talk about it. Most stressful episode of the Batman Book Club I've ever been on because I still don't know how I feel about that book. And it was announced that the absolute edition of that is coming in March of next year. And you bet
Yes.
I'm going to buy it because I can't help myself. Uh, and as much as I'll say with that, and RIP left a bad taste in my mouth, but Batman and Robin helped with that taste because I love that series. I do. As much as I don't like Damian Wayne, then borderline hated the character. Morrison somehow wrote him and Dick so well together. And even in other stories, other writers had to have taken note of how Morrison did that because other writers, it can be annoying when it's Bruce and Damian, but even when Dick comes into those issues, when he's not even Batman anymore, Dick and Damian, it just works. Like it just works. And I don't know how Morrison cracked that code for this series, but that it was knowing my feelings when that absolute was announced was another one of like, oh yeah, I'm absolutely gonna get it. I have to get it because that leave RIP in the dust. Like that is a great 16 issue series. And for all the reasons you said too, now blow it up and you're getting like a buffet of artists, such variety. maxed out, and then you do get a similar thing like what I said, the Long Halloween. You're getting commentary on covers, which I love that idea. And you're getting these fun little notes. It's for nothing except it's why we bought the ticket is to get these fun notes that otherwise we maybe wouldn't have gotten to see or come across. So I think like that's hopefully that gets like looking at upcoming Absolutes reprint. I don't see that one being mentioned anywhere. Hopefully, like you said, that does get rectified. Maybe, as Gunn's DC universe takes off and Damian
Yeah.
enters the equation again, maybe they'll push toward, getting more Damian Robin content out there. I don't know. Just, thinking out loud, but hopefully, because this is one that I definitely would tell people give a shot. Even like I'll be the one if they don't like Damian, of like, listen to me. I couldn't like Damian less than at that moment in time. And it still works for me. So yeah, good absolute. Well
Yeah,
done.
and I think that's a good guess on the timing of a reprint too, because I mean, with Superman, a couple of different stories are either coming to the absolute format for the first time or are getting reprints for the first
Yeah.
time in a while. Um, like All Star, they've kind of kept in print periodically, but not super
Yeah.
consistently. But like Death of Superman is getting its very first absolute edition at the end of the year. And they added Red Sun to the mix, and I think Gunn had mentioned that story is like a spiritual kind of inspiration, if not a specific inspiration. So, and All Stars influence is apparent, of course. But
Hmm.
yeah, so hopefully by the time like if presuming what we now understand to be the Brave and the Bold comes out, seems like that would be an optimal time to put it back in print. Hopefully they do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully they do. Let's see. Of these two, let me just reach over. I'll grab one more. Rah, rah, rah. This is one I held off. Let's see. This next one, it was released in 2016. I was not quick to pull the trigger on this one. I was really going back and forth on do I need it? Don't I? And it sounds ridiculous now in hindsight, but I held off. And then, like many people, when the pandemic started, we started shopping online and I started spending a lot online. But once I got Absolute Batman Year One in my hands, there was no going back. I'm glad I pulled the trigger on this. Um, because it was kind of a hefty price tag there for quite a while. The cover price says $125, and I'm like, for a four-issue story, what kind of extras do they have for me? And it's like, no, there's two books included. And I'm like, oh, sweet. Well, what's the other book? And it's like Year One. Well, what's the other book though? Year One. So wait, both books are Year One? Yeah. You're not helping me justify spending. But because we're nerds, the two books are two different paper because we love paper styles of paper and coloring. And the one many people I know, and I'm not here to pick a side, will love the kind of like the thicker paper and like recoloring and stuff of Mazzucchelli's art. Looks great. It looks like what was released for the deluxe edition back I think a year that you'd mentioned. I'm not exactly sure. And there's a write-up from Frank Miller from 1988 that's a nice intro, and it's got cool extras in the back, Mazzucchelli's art, the Caped Crusader, a short comic that he drew and wrote, which is really cool. Cool sketches of his. His first comics page that he ever drew as like a kid. That kind of stuff is great. All that's good. And then like the different versions of the story that have come out, like a hardcover, the first hardcover, the reprinted trades, they've got those fully laid out and explained of where when those come out. And I love seeing that. That's all cool. So then I look at the second version and then blown away. One, because the front of it is the cover to 404, the back is cover to 407. But then I opened it and it's the newsprint type of paper. I'm a sucker for that stuff. That just puts me in such a cool feel of this is what it was like. This is the quality when it came out. Oh, this is so cool. It's just feels very authentic. And then to have something that I wish they would do everywhere is the letters column. They've got
Yes.
the letters column for each for because they were a couple months behind. So in issue 404, clearly you're not going to get the letters to 404 in that, but they grab it from yeah. So like for the first or the second chapter, it's a the following letter column originally ran in Batman number 409, but it relates to this issue. I love that they have that just as like a a snapshot in time. What direct responses from people at the time to those issues. That was so cool. The look of it all on this newsprint paper is awesome. The you get the full scripts of Frank Miller's throughout on this book. It's just I don't know. Like to me, this was where my money came through. I didn't spend the 125. I got on a hella deal. Um, this was where I'm like, this is why I bought this book. And sure, it can look not as pristine and clear, but it just feels authentic. And now it's like whenever I go to reread year one, and because I bought the damn artist edition, it is like, do I have to read it 3 times now? I can't just pick of these two versions which one. Uh, but in short, that's like the end. Like that's where I found the absolute year one. And I tried to approach these absolute picks as like it's not about the story. Which story? My favorite Batman stories. I'm not picking these because it's my favorite. I'm trying to think the absolute edition. How does that stand out? And this like there we go again. This absolutely stands out. It's like one of the best absolute editions for that reason. You grabbed something, Chris.
I grabbed mine.
You grabbed Batman Year One. How about them
Agreed.
apples?
Agreed on all counts. I mean, I didn't get this one until 2021, I think. I
Okay.
was waiting on it because it did seem a little steep to me as well. But year one is also my all-time favorite Batman story, probably. So I knew I would get it. I just didn't jump on this right away. I probably should have, but that premium it did seem a little hard to ask. But the 2 volumes and the fact that they pay such close attention to the paper stock,
Mm-hmm.
because even the covers are different
Mm-hmm.
in the archival version. It's glossier paper and thicker paper that you would find on a comic book cover in the late 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
And they pay such close attention to the reproduction. I'm glad that they have those mint condition copies in the DC archives that they were able to source for these, because it is completely, you're 100% right about authenticity. Um, I go back and forth on how to revisit this story if I want
Yeah.
to actually read it in the sort of remastered version
Mm-hmm.
or in the original newsprint. Both have merits, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Mazzucchelli did rather narrowly curate the reproduction of the collected edition version that is in here, but there is something to be said about experiencing the story as people originally did when it came out. And you don't have to choose between them if you have this volume. You can do both at the same time if you want to. It might take a little finagling and maybe some music stands around where you're
Yeah.
sitting, but you could do it if you want to. And yeah, this is a deep personal favorite of mine. On top of just being my favorite Batman story, this is a great example of what to do, particularly with a legacy book. We think about this as a staple of the modern age of comics, but you're getting close to 40 years old. And I can say that because I'm almost 40 years old, and this book came out before I was born. Not very by much, but almost did. And so this is a legacy story, and comics generally have undergone pretty significant transformations, not just in the way that the stories are created, but in the way that we consume them.
Mm-hmm.
So giving service to recreating that original experience holds a lot of weight in my mind, because it's almost like reaching back to those fans that read this story off the rack,
Mm-hmm.
and having an experience with them, but you're having it at a larger size and something that does show off the intricacy of the artwork, either in the original form or in the remastered form. So this is a big personal favorite of mine, and you would be remiss if you didn't add this to your collection if you're a big Batman fan. Definitely.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at. I can't find the picture to send, like to send or show you, but how you said of like grab a music stand and um have each version set up. And I did the artist edition, excuse me, with Clay McCormick last year, and yeah, I can't find it. But I did such a like my my lady, she'd asked me something about the book because I even took a picture of her holding it, and like, my God, it looks massive. Her
Yeah.
holding it. But I explained it to her of like, look at this is why I have different versions of the year one, okay? Because let me lay this out. Look at this page, and now over here is this one, and now here's the artist edition of it, whatever. And she took a picture of the setup so she could send it to everybody. She's not one that's like shits on my nerdery or anything like that. She just finds the humor in it of like, I just got a lesson in different versions of a comic book printing thanks to Batman Year One. And I want to find that picture because it does make me laugh of like, here's my regular size, here's the absolute, now here's the artist edition, all on the same page. But like, uh, it's like, I don't know, that a story like Year One is there's a reason it's stuck around all this time, and it's like these multiple versions are evidence of that. And
Yeah.
even I do love that artist edition. I think it was fascinating. It's not something I'll do for Batman stories. Year One, I only did it because it's like it's a top 10, one of my favorite Batman stories, and it's one of the shortest. So it's like, I don't see how they would ever do a long Halloween artist edition, and then I couldn't afford it, and I don't know that I could lift it. Uh, Year One is like the only manageable one I could do, and I'm like, only time I'm really gonna do it. But yeah, of these four, which I'm about to say my fourth one too, it's funny because of the four, only two of them were in that episode 50 was our top 10 Batman stories. Only two of them were in my top 10. So I didn't choose based on favorite Batman stories um of all time. Uh it is thinking about the absolute version itself. So year one, yeah. I don't know. I think it's kind of going for, I'm looking online
It's like
some
90 bucks
places.
on Amazon, I
I
think.
see, yeah, I see 91 on Amazon, 82 from another seller. If I go to, yeah, on in stock trades, here you go, free plug, $75. So, and
Good.
I will say, and they're giving nothing to this show, in stock trades takes their shipping very serious, and they
Yes.
package their stuff like professionals. You are not
Yep.
going to get a ding or anything on your material when you order from them. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
All right.
Agree.
So that's your four, right? You've revealed your hand.
Well, actually, that was yours.
Oh, well, you held up your one. I thought that you were just holding it up. Oh, okay. Go
I
ahead,
was just holding it
Chris.
up.
Wait,
I
there's
was
more.
conferring. There's
Okay.
more. There's one more.
Excellent. Great. Because I kind of don't want it to end, but
This is a very recent addition, but
oh,
Batman
I knew it was
Unstoppable.
coming. I knew it
Yeah,
was coming.
I think you did. I think you did. Um, so those of you who might be following Knights Never Die on the Comic Binge with myself and Javi Trujillo, we are going through the Grant Morrison Batman run issue by issue, and we're going very slowly, mostly just because scheduling is a pain, generally speaking. But we're working our way through this. We're just up to the actually issues that aren't even really included in here for the resurrection of Ra's al Ghul, but we're inching closer to the end of the issues that are included in this. And this basically takes you from the beginning of the Morrison run right up to the edge before Batman RIP begins. Um, I think beyond the fact that I just really do love these issues deeply, this is also a really solid showcase of different artists and different styles at the top of their game. Because not only do you have Andy Kubert, who actually writes an introduction in here and has some really incredible work in here to show off. But you also have J.H. Williams III, and you have Tony Daniel, and those three guys in particular uh, render Batman and his supporting cast, and in some cases beyond his supporting cast, with such uniqueness and clarity that this format really emphasizes just how good they are at what they do.
Hmm.
So you also have the very controversial John Van Fleet prose issue of Batman, number 663, The Clown at Midnight.
It's a tough read.
Yeah, we had a very entertaining conversation about that on the comic
I
book club.
listened,
Oh,
and I
okay.
really recommend that people go and listen to because there's one person on that episode that is funny to listen to because that person does not like it.
No, not at all. Not at all.
To put it lightly.
We had like a full spectrum on that
Yeah,
episode
it
because
was
it was
good.
like one person who hated it, one person more in the middle, and another person far on the other side who just absolutely loved it. But yeah, check it out if you haven't. But
Hmm.
the inclusion of that story in here just adds to the variety of the kind of storytelling you get from this specific volume. You know, whether you love that story or you hate it, it just adds to the uniqueness, not just of the run, but of this book in particular. And that's one of the reasons I enjoy it as much as I do. But there's also some really solid extras. They kind quasi adapted Batman and Son into an animated movie, and you can see some concept art and character work in here. Um, there's some great sketches from pretty much all of the artists, and really unique insight into the mind of Grant Morrison putting these stories together. And this is just the beginning of, regardless of where you come down on it, this is the beginning of a very momentous and unique time in Batman's publication history. You'd never had a run like this before. I promise you'll never have one like it
Yeah,
again.
yeah,
So, you know, in that respect, it's absolutely, there you go again,
yeah.
worthy
Well,
of a spot on the shelf. And but it's also just a really good. It's not the best in terms of special features, but it punches above its weight. Especially, I guess some of the more recent absolutes, barring three Jokers, might have skimped a little on some of the extra features, but this one doesn't. And you also have a new cover on the interior that was drawn by Andy Kubert, which is a great addition. So, you know, unique artwork that you can only get from this is
yeah.
always a nice little bonus to have. But yeah, I think this is a pretty good tome.
It's also huge
Yes.
because I forget how many issues are included, but I mean we're
Let's
knocking
see.
on 20 almost.
655, 6, 7, 8, 663, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Skip 70, 71, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 15. And then it
15.
also includes Batman Incorporated's future Damian story
Yeah.
that came out several years later.
So
A lot of
that's
books.
big. That's
Yeah.
big. And so with that came a heftier price tag. And I got mine from a place that I'd mentioned earlier. And it was a good deal. And they're on in stock now. It's at $90, which for, I
Okay.
know that's expensive for a book. I get it. But like Chris just mentioned, that's a big book. A lot of issues included. Amazon has one left. Kid you not. $58.47.
Wow.
I can't tell you by the time this episode drops that it's still going to be there. But if it is, that's a steal. That's a steal. Hurry up, whoever that one person is, and order that because that's a bargain. Just pulling that up. And I hope there's a bump in Batman Absolutes after releasing this and that there's some attention thrown to mine and Chris's way and be like, you know what? We appreciate all you guys have done. Here's a couple free absolutes or money for the next one.
Hey.
Um, hey, I already mentioned that was a run that I had a blast following. So it was no hesitation for me to order that. It was just the fact of like, what's going to be the price that I'm willing to pay and will it get below? And pretty quickly it got to where I was comfortable spending and
I think
no
we
regrets.
we talked about that when we got together for death metal. You were thinking about getting it, but hadn't jumped on it yet. So
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we're yeah.
Yeah. Well, here I am. I've got
There you
it. You
go.
can't see it, so you're just taking my word for it. All right, my last pick. Here we go, Mr. Clow. Is a lot of people's first picks when it came to Batman Absolute Editions, including you, Batman Hush.
There it is.
This when I put out there on the socials about people's favorites, this was their favorites. They said this was their first. This is their favorite. I under Rightfully so. I understand Batman Hush is a story that people just absolutely adore and love. No pun intended. Damn it, keep doing it. This was my second Absolute Edition. Then after this was Watchmen. I know that was the order. Long Halloween, Hush, then Watchmen. Um, you commented on, and I meant to say before earlier, they have started to skimp, I think, on extras, on absolutes. Not as much as included. I think part of that is because we've been in the internet age so long that the extras we are given in real time now. We're exposed to in real time. And you can name, to add more, it costs more to print, therefore the price goes up. So maybe that's like part of it now too. But you look at like some extras of, long those first, 5 years plus of absolute editions compared to now, and there's a lot more then. Well, Hush, coming off of Long Halloween, Hush delivered. You have another 12 issue story included in this, but you also have another interview at the beginning from a chat room, sign of the times, with Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb. Awesome behind the scenes process of getting together for the story, making the story, Jim cutting it very close to deadlines. Um, all that good stuff. But then afterward, I mean, and then it's a Jim Lee showcase. It's his portfolio. This looks amazing. His artwork is amazing. But the annotations by Jim Lee for pages. It's not Easter eggs per se. It's just his annotations. It's a commentary of his throughout the book of Hush. And I'm like, man, that's the stuff that I like. I want more of these days. I love reading that stuff. And of course, we can go to social medias now, and you can see writers and artists kind of do their own. It's not as in depth, but they can post a page and be like, I really tried with this here, tweaked this, blah blah blah. But what this book has with it is like I just love the Jim Lee annotations, and then it includes a ton of tons of sketches by him. So my let's see, 2005 is when it came out. I'm trying to see, mine's a second printing, so there we go. Um, but I've read this one, uh, not at like second to Long Halloween as far as my absolutes.
Sure.
Just because Hush is such a fun story to me. And this version is the way to read it. I don't really read it except for the absolute anymore. And I'll always find myself reading the interview at the beginning and Lee's annotations at the end. And let's see, new printing of that. It's being reprinted, coming out in October. Oh my gosh. Man, it's about to get really expensive for people if they're going to catch up on absolutes. But Hush is one that I don't see them having a problem selling. I think people are going
No,
to catch up on that one and get it.
yeah, and that's why they have pretty steadily kept that one in print. I mean, that book, it defined pretty much an era of Batman artistry, right?
Yeah.
It's at least in the visuals alone. I mean, it's and it was also around this time that Jeff Loeb was coming off of Superman, and there is a little bit of lineage to his Superman run within Hush that's fun to
Hmm.
see, of course. But yeah, I mean, there was a reason why it was the first choice for me when I started adding absolute editions to my shelf. The damage that my slipcase has undergone was not my doing because I
Ah,
wanted to share this story with a lot of people, and I shared my absolute edition, and
ah,
it was a bad choice on my
yeah.
part, unfortunately. But
Trying to do a good thing.
yeah,
Trying to do a good thing.
trying trying to spread the gospel. That's all. Right? The Batman missionary work. Have you
Yeah.
met my friend
I,
Bruce? But
Here, this is all you need.
yeah. But no, I mean it's I don't know if I necessarily see the Hush Absolute as like a template for everything that the format can be, but
Yeah.
it gets pretty close. Because there are like the annotations in and of themselves make it worth the price of admission, I think. Just getting into Jim Lee's head as he kind of determines the course to take with the way that the book looks is really valuable. If you have read and enjoyed Loeb's previous work with Batman, particularly with Tim Sale, there is an identifiable lineage in the kind of storytelling that happens. I think a lot of the novelty at the time the book came out was because, Loeb's biggest high profile Batman work was always at the beginning of his career as opposed to Batman in his prime. Like that's one of the
Hmm.
things that's fun about reading Hush as a Jeff Loeb Batman story. And yeah, I haven't checked in on Hush 2 yet. I still need to. But I've heard several different things. You and I might have to have a more dedicated conversation about that off mic.
Okay.
But all
All
right, sounds
right.
good. But there's nothing taking away from the importance of Hush as like a landmark work in Batman storytelling. And I know some people, in fact, I know for a fact that some people might bristle at that idea, but its ubiquity speaks for itself.
Mhm.
I mean, this book is everywhere. Every page, it seems, populates a calendar on someone's wall.
Right?
Yeah. So, and
Yeah.
there's good reason for that.
Yeah.
It's an important story, regardless of what some people might think about it. And that's why it was pretty easy to see that it would get the absolute treatment as soon as it did in the format's life, relatively speaking. And yeah, I think a pretty big Batman fan, it's kind of an essential thing for me to have on my shelf
Hmm.
because of that. Its importance should not to be understated and cannot be overstated. It brought a lot of new fans into the fold, and the Absolute Edition recognizes the importance that the story has, and it also recognizes the acumen of the creators with sufficient extras to show why they made the decisions that they did. And
Yeah.
that's
I
what
love
makes it
that.
really fun to
Yeah.
absorb.
Well, kind of like what you said, Loeb had said last year, even when they were doing some rounds about announcing the last Halloween and then Hush 2, that him going into comic shops over the years, uh, workers in the comic shop, and maybe you can attest to this too because you worked in one of people would ask them like, I want to, you know, dip into some Batman reading. I know nothing. Like, and in many times it was like we give them Long Halloween and Hush. Like
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
people who aren't into it like you and I are. It's like give me just a little taste. Like Loeb wrote two of the most accessible Batman stories and
yeah.
some of the best.
Well, but one of the things that I don't think Hush gets enough credit for is just how much of a crash course in Batman history the reading experience is. It
True.
packs in a lot of history. It's usually through like exposition, so
Yeah.
it's kind of fleeting here and there. But I mean, like those watercolor flashback pages to me are still like
Perfect.
peak Jim
Yeah.
Lee.
Yeah.
And it's not just Jim Lee, of course, but the entire
Sure.
artistic team collaborating on those pages gives those memories this ethereal quality that look wonderful in the Absolute
Mhm.
Edition. But if you read that story, I mean, you're going to learn about Batman's earliest days. He reflects on some of the things that happen in from year one to Long Halloween to Dark Victory. Dick Grayson is involved. You meet Tim Drake. It invokes Jason Todd in a bit of a backhanded way ultimately, but it still does it. It references the trauma that Batman goes through by losing Jason. It
Yeah.
references the trauma that Batman has faced as a result of what the Joker has done, particularly to Barbara when he's going through that rage-filled beating session with the Joker. And you also get really great insight into his relationship with Jim Gordon in that same moment. It packs so much history. So even if you had never read Year One or Long Halloween or Dark Victory or stories where Batman and Superman might have gotten together in the past, or if you didn't really understand what the driving force was behind the dynamic of Batman versus the Joker, every bit of that information, you will learn at least something about it by reading Hush. And in that sense, and it's an extremely efficient delivery mechanism to really get you up to speed with Batman's
Mhm.
modern history up to that point.
Yeah.
And I don't think the book gets enough credit for that. There's people who love these. It seems like it's in vogue these days to really criticize Hush as a story. And look, that's fine. Does it make the best choices in every case? No. But in terms of just like bleeding love for Batman storytelling, I don't think you can find a book that bleeds as much love of Batman as a story like Hush.
I feel like it's a summer blockbuster in comic book form.
Oh, totally.
Of sure, there's some parts of it that you can definitely be like, that it's not you can poke a couple holes in some spots, but it's like by the end of it, you're like, hot damn if I didn't have a good time and I can't wait to revisit. And that's always been me with Hush. I've never seen it as completely flawless, but I've seen it as one of the most reread Batman stories, like of my library. It is one that I'll just go back and read for pure like I just out of entertainment because it's so much fun. And I never thought of the point like you just said of like a crash course kind of in Batman history. I think
Harold
that's a
is
really
in
good point.
Hush.
Oh man, somewhere Pete just got whoo.
Right. Yeah.
He
I
loves
mean,
that Harold.
and even if you'd never heard of Harold, if you read that story for the first time and you learned about him, you were mourning his loss,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because it just like it very efficiently delivers who he was, what he did, and it gives you a frame of reference for a loss that you're about to have. Spoiler alert for a 22-year story, but still, I
Oops.
mean, it packs so much Batman history by necessity. I mean, that's the intent of Hush at the end of the day and the ultimate mastermind of the story. I'll keep that out of it just in case. But the fact that it manages to pack that much into the story is still pretty astounding to me. Regardless of where you might come down on specific narrative choices that are made, there's a reason why Hush is at the top of so many different lists. It walks such a fine balanced line between being accessible to a lot of people. Jim Lee's artwork gets a lot of people in the door while also being referential to Batman's history. But it's not just references for the sake of making references. It's references to give greater emotional impact to the journey that the characters are going through. And that's the best kind of referential nature.
Best. Why? Because Batman is the best. That's why.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Hopefully you've sweated out enough, Chris. Let's go ahead. Let's rank these. Let's
All
rank
right.
these absolutes. We'll start with we'll go back and forth. Our honorable mention, and then our three, our two, and our one. So
All
your
right.
honorable mention, number four.
Oh, I guess. Ugh. Oh man, you're gonna make me. This is hard. This is really hard. Honorable mention, I guess, will be Black Mirror. Um,
Okay.
it doesn't
Okay.
quite hit the top three for me, but especially considering its relative recency, it's a 14-year-old story at this point, which is relatively recent on the long arc of Batman storytelling. Um, Punches way above its weight, doesn't quite hit the top end threshold, but it gets really close. And one of the things that I just have always appreciated about Black Mirror is that, weirdly enough, to me, it's a hell of a way for the original volume of Detective Comics to have gone out. I felt like it was a really inspired way to close a chapter of Batman's history
Sure.
before the beginning of the New 52 in a way that rewards longtime fans for reading it and for being Dick Grayson fans. Like if you're a Nightwing fan, um, and a Batman fan, you're going to get the most out of it probably. But it's also just like it was a foretaste of the feast to come that we would get from Scott Snyder's contributions to the Batman character. And that's what pushes it near that top threshold for me.
Okay, fair. I'm gonna jump to three Jokers. Nothing but positives. The absolute format, I think the other three just offer a little bit more than three Jokers does. That's as close as I'm gonna get to a negative. That's it.
Sure.
Number three.
Dark Victory.
Okay.
Um, it is a great absolute edition. Could be a little stronger on the extras, but it's my far and away preferred way to read that story. Um, Everything that I said before about just the seriousness that it gives to the origin of Robin as a character, it shoves that concept into the modern era in such a great way. I can't divorce the love of the story from the effectiveness of the absolute format. I think it is pretty synergistic generally between those two things. And best read as a companion with The Long Halloween, of course,
Yeah.
but as an absolute on its own, I think it hits pretty high.
Okay. It's I'm right there with you. I didn't mention that earlier that whenever I'm done with the long Halloween, I do immediately go to Dark Victory. It's a package deal. I'm never like one over the other. Got to do
Yep.
them both.
Same. Same.
Um, Number three for me, year one. Nothing but positives. I think it's something that it has maybe over any absolute is the authenticity that I was highlighting earlier, and that feel there isn't really Killing Joke is the only one that comes close to it because it does have that reprinted in the midst of the absolute is the newspaper style print, and I do love that feel of it. But year one, yeah, I feel very confident. That's number three for me. Your number two, which I know then kind of, if everybody's been following along, will reveal your number one, but I guess you can just go number two.
Yeah. Batman Reborn. As far as taking great advantage of the format, the fact that you have so many different artists packed into those 16 issues, uh, I think really gives it kind of a tour de force status to see some of the best artists that have contributed to Batman over the last 20 years doing what they do best. The stories themselves, I love. I think that they show a lot of really great insight into what it takes to assume the mantle of Batman while also giving us a lot of really great information about the resiliency and really power of someone like Bruce Wayne, even though he's not in it very much. He is in it a little bit at the
Hmm.
end. And there is a version of him that is in this absolute that I think also says other unique things about Bruce Wayne if you're willing to put those pieces together. But that's really like going on the full journey of the run up until that point, including Final Crisis. But just generally speaking, in isolation, as an absolute edition, it's got great features. It's got such diversity in the kinds of artists that it's showcasing. They're just really strong stories. And it's a handsome looking book, too. It's well designed.
It's a
So
handsome book.
it is. It really is. I love it. And so yeah, that one is probably my number two.
My number two was also my number two absolute edition, and that's Batman Hush. It's wonderful. It's great. It's something's funny about how that and my number one, they're almost the same length in page numbers, but the Hush version, for whatever its reason, is like a half inch thinner. I don't know what that's about. Maybe the glossy paper. But yeah, no notes, no complaints. That sucker delivers and re-emphasize that if somebody wants it, has been waiting, reprint's coming in October. So highly recommended. Buy that version. So Chris, that leaves your number one as
Year one. Year one is my favorite one. Um,
absolute.
it's especially for people who are into the history of the comics medium. You get the history of comics over the last 40 years in a single book. And you see the way that the original printings are preserved in it, I just have a lot of admiration for. I think that that was really the right approach to take in terms of reproducing this story for posterity
Hmm.
and for showing people what comics look. Because I mean, the accessibility of off the rack issues from the mid to late 80s, as time goes on, it's going to be harder and harder to find those books in reasonable condition.
Yeah.
So having this kind of reproduction of what those books looked and felt like too, and even smelled like, as we kind of touched on a
Yeah.
little bit. I think that that has a lot of important kind of historical and academic value that DC should keep going. That they
Yeah.
should do more stuff like this. It's there. Year One is far from the oldest reproduced story in the absolute format, but it's the only one that has taken that specific kind of approach. I mean, even a book like Killing Joke, you have two versions of the story in terms of the colors, but the reproduction of the original experience was not a component of the absolute Killing Joke. I would love it if they went back and did something like this on Jack Kirby's Fourth World, for instance, or even older stories if they could do that. I would like to see that repeated, even if it was like its own special dedicated line of reproductions at that size. I think
Hmm.
that would be a really worthy endeavor for folks who are interested to see how the medium has progressed over however many years. But on top of that too, it's Batman Year One. In my
Yeah.
mind, it's probably it's my favorite Batman story. Which it doesn't even include the Joker really, except for a brief mention of him, which is saying something. But um, if you've never read it before, I mean, you're gonna get a prototypical example of how a modern superhero origin should work and how it does work in its best cases.
Yeah.
So I don't think really anything has come close to the effectiveness of Year One, especially considering its length. It is only, like we said, it's only 4 issues. And the fact that it hits as high as it does, I think says a lot about the strength of the story. David Mazzucchelli's artwork is second to none. You get a really great sense of grittiness, but also emotion and heart. He's really good at rendering the faces. It's a roller coaster in the truest sense of the word, in a narrative sense at least. So great story, great concept for an absolute edition. My favorite, probably.
So your favorite Batman story is also your favorite Batman Absolute Edition.
How
Well,
about that?
my favorite Batman story is also my favorite Batman Absolute Edition. Was also my first Absolute Edition. Like I said, Long Halloween, the most unsurprising thing probably that I've said in a long time. It's my number one, but I mean with good reason. I already explained it to him. A lot of what you said on the year one, your thoughts on year one, like yes, agreed. Um, now apply that to the long Halloween for me. Like just not I can't say enough and I won't say enough. And a lot of people are probably sick of me talking about the long Halloween so much, talking to you, Paul Herman. But the absolute edition is just like, man, this is just ah. Imagine if you could watch The Dark Knight in IMAX every time you watch The Dark Knight. It's like that's reading the absolute edition of The Long Halloween. This is the way to do it. And then you get the commentary from Nolan available to you and the making of and all that. Like, oh, that's The Long Halloween for me. Absolute edition. Now, Chris, I want to respect your time. I have one more question for you that I do want to ask because I'm really curious on what you how you would answer this.
Yes, you've got a question?
All of the Batman Absolute editions that we have, what's the one that you're waiting for?
You're not
Like
gonna like
not
it.
announced yet, or it
Oh,
is
not
announced.
announced.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
like, no, I'm saying what it can cover of it has been announced or it's not announced, and you're like, man, where's this one? This is what I would like on my shelf in absolute form.
I mean, RIP is definitely up there for me.
Yeah.
Um, I'm really interested just to see if the reading experience is changed at all by the format because I mean, it's the same story, of course, each time, but there is, I think, a different feel that you get from reading stories in Absolute that might contribute to your perception of a story when you come away from it. Um, as far as other stuff is concerned, gosh, I'll have to think about that. I honestly
Okay.
wasn't
Well,
prepared for that
technically, you
question.
did answer R.I.P.
Sure.
and you're getting it. So I mean, you did answer, Chris.
Well, I mean, but in terms of like other, you know, I think Under the Hood might deserve the treatment. We did just get a pretty
Hmm.
sizable deluxe edition
It was a good
hardcover for it.
deluxe.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's a great one. Yeah. I mean, it approaches omnibus level,
Yeah.
honestly.
That's big.
But I have seen Doug Mankey's work blown up at that size, particularly through Absolute Blackest Night. He
Hmm.
did Green Lantern tie-in issues to the main event that are included in that Absolute, and looks pretty nice. So I would probably toss that in there. Um, Tangentially Batman related, I do think Wonder Woman the Hikatea deserves the absolute treatment at some point.
All right.
J.G. Jones's work, I've also seen an absolute size in Final Crisis. And as much as that is a Wonder Woman story, Batman has a very big part to play in it. And I love that story a lot. So I would, if I could throw in sort of a tangential Batman
That
connection
counts.
somehow, then that would, yeah, then that's probably what I would toss in there. I could go on and
Keep
on.
going on.
More world's finest stuff. Batman and Superman, in my mind, are the two greatest characters in fiction, and when they're even better together in my mind. So
uh,
more of that stuff.
one, this isn't mine, but it would definitely would have been bought day one. Gotham by Gaslight was originally set for a 2020 release, and then that got canceled,
Hey,
and it's never been. No word why, no word on if it's gonna be, here we are 5 years later and still no word. I'm like, that'd have been a cool one. It's a cool one to have on the shelf. But for me, I would love to have Strange Apparitions.
ooh, good choice.
Englehart is here. You can still get awesome stories for extras and everything from that guy to throw into that Strange Apparitions Absolute Edition on some of the like the an era that one of that many people would even say the definitive Batman and Batman the Animated Series pulled from that era of Batman stories and content, and Strange Apparitions was part of that. Like that needs an absolute treatment. And man, pull from the man himself. Because when I talked to him, uh, in episode 236, I was asking him questions about stuff from the 70s, and he was firing them off. He knew the answers. He was still remembering uh, in the 70s. So like, man, that guy is at your disposal. Ask him questions about his, highly regarded and beloved Batman run. Give me that. And I mean, it's only six. Well, it depends on how many they'd want to include. Because I guess Strange Apparitions does run 8, 10 issues, but it's like only six are Rogers and Englehart. But you know what I mean. That's what I think I would like. Give me the newspaper print on that sucker too. Gimme,
Sure.
gimme. I've
Yeah.
got the recoloring in the collections that they've released of Englehart and Rogers, and stuff. No, give me the original. Take me back to 1976.
No, it's yeah, no, that's an excellent and you know what? If you're going to include, I mean, Strange Apparitions, you're getting a lot of issues out of.
Yeah.
I actually quite enjoyed their reunitive. Um, and I would certainly not mind seeing that, maybe not packed in with it, but you get those two guys together, you're going to get the Joker vote for me and I'll kill you is still something that sticks out
I
in my
mean,
mind quite a bit.
that that and the Laughing Fish cover, those two
Yeah.
covers are some of the most recognized Batman comic covers of all time. And they're from the same
Oh yeah.
creative team. So yeah, I mean, why not really double down and include it all? Why not? I'll pay it.
Yeah.
DC, come
Sure.
on. Englehart said he
Even
talked to Jim Lee, and maybe, knock on wood, they're saying give me Englehart's like, there's these nerds that really love these absolute editions. Can we make one?
I mean, that sounds like an
Please,
omnibus to me, right? I mean, if they
please.
don't want to do the full-on format, at least give us an omnibus of all of these guys' work together, including the more recent stuff,
Yeah.
Omnibus Omnibus is a second to Absolutes. At least, it's just like it's deluxe size, so it's slightly larger than the regular trim. And I mean, they can be as thick as phone books sometimes, but it's a lot of good reading material.
Yeah.
So that's definitely one I would add to my shelf. But if they did push for an Absolute for like maybe the specific Strange Apparitions issues, oh, it's like a day one buy. You kidding?
Jim Lee, I know you're listening to this, and we've already said a lot of good things about your work on Hush. Make the absolute strange apparitions happen. I'm just saying it'll sell. I promise.
Does DC
Okay.
Comics like money? Because
Yeah,
if they do,
you'll make
make that book. Yeah.
it. You will make that money. I'm just saying. All right. Chris, just like that. I mean, we're approaching 2 hours. That fast. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I mean,
I find it hilarious that I even thought that we could do this in an hour. It's just like, what was I thinking? What was I thinking?
it was a
But
goal to shoot for,
yeah,
right?
it was. And then I think as we approached, I'm like, it's not happening, but it won't be too far. And then that was 45 minutes ago. And I'm like, oh, well, we tried. We tried. Thank you for doing this. I do appreciate it. Always love talking Batman with you. Plug anything, everything, say whatever you want to say.
Sure. Well, thank you again for the invitation. I always love talking Batman with you. It's always a blast. I don't get the chance to podcast specifically about Batman very much anymore, so I really do value these moments when they come along. So thank you for the
Gosh,
invite.
Paul, he's a real pain in the ass over there.
Yeah, well, Nights Never Die is a labor of love for
There you
us.
go.
And that is on the Comic Binge, and that's my most regular Batman commentary for stories that are now approaching 20 years old. So there's always
Woof.
that. But Javi Trujillo is, of course, the heart and soul of our trio, and Paul, the founding father of the Comic Binge, does a lot of work to keep that channel going. So if you wouldn't mind throwing some support in that direction, I know that he would certainly appreciate it. We all would. But yeah, be sure to check out Nights Never Die. The next issue that we're doing at the time that we're recording this, at least, is Batman number 671, which is part 4 of the resurrection of Ra's al Ghul. We'll get through it so that we can get back to the fun issues of the run. And then the other thing that's coming up, I have a Star Trek podcast called Discovery Debrief. We've been taking a bit of a break since Star Trek Discovery ended, but what I think is maybe the best show on TV, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, is coming back later this month, and that's going to give us a reason to get together again. So if you are inclined to enjoy anything out of the Final Frontier, maybe give that a try. And be sure to tune into the Comic Binge because we have other stuff that we're going to announce, especially because there is a DC Comics movie coming out this month that we're all pretty excited for. And we got a lot to say about our good friend, the world's greatest hero, the Man of Steel. So
It's funny you mentioned when you mentioned Javi's name earlier, his ears were burning because he texted me. My phone lit up and it said Javi Trujillo. And I was like, my goodness, look at that. So I was very sneaky and took a picture of our, of my screen of us talking. And I said, hey, talking to Chris Clow right now.
Nice.
Stop interrupting.
Bobby.
There you go. Yeah. All right. Well, as for Batman Book Club, follow on the social media stuff at the Batman BC for latest episode drops, upcoming episodes, and sometimes some giveaways. Subscribe to the YouTube channel where Pete and I are diving back into No Man's Land, the omnibus. It's happening. If you want to support the show, variety of ways you can do that. Patreon.com/thebatmanbc, tpublic.com, type in TBBC for the Batman Book Club. But if you want to support the show, you don't want to spend any money at all, that's 100% A-OK. Easiest, quickest, most impactful, and helpful thing you can do for this show. Yes, you can help it. Just rate and review it. So however you listen to this show, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, go to the rate and review page, rate and review the show, because the more words the show gets, the more it helps. What? The more reviews the show gets, the more it helps spread the word. There we go. And as you, me, and Chris Clow all know, that word is panic. So, for the Professor Clow, I am Ryan Lauer. Till next time, read more Absolute Editions.